sometimes anger is the greatest form of escapism. And we don't like to admit that because when people are angry, they justify the heck out of being angry. That's what being angry is. It's like, I'm angry because of you, because of this happened.
If you want to enjoy life and stop escaping life, you need to understand consciously when you are veering off the path from being the person you want to be. Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate this hypersexualized time. And I think I forgot to do that intro last week. It sat with me. It really sat with me. And I've repented, and I'm sorry for not doing my intro. I'm sorry. So in today's episode, we are dealing with escapism. It's something that comes up a lot. We have entire talks about it during our live presentations, but Benji and I do a deep dive because it's such an important thing to understand in great detail. When do you escape? Why do you escape? Because when you start playing this game of understanding yourself, if you can identify the things that cause you to escape and you can deal with them, the emotions that sponsor this desire to want to escape, then you stop wanting to escape. And then all of a sudden you start to create a life that is worth living instead of escaping from. And then all of a sudden you actually love life and you start to invest in it and great things start to happen. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy of goodness that can happen when you stop running away from yourself, from your emotions, from your responsibilities. So we want to help you, and we do, by unpacking this. I hope you like it. I think this is a really great episode. People, are you escaping right now? Are you escaping? Stop escaping.
Oh.
Are you using this episode
My goodness.
to avoid your homework? Is your mommy trying to talk to you, but you're like, nah, I'm listening to an episode of High Noon. Well, stop it. But if you're listening to this to connect, then let's go. Welcome, Benji.
Let's do it. Welcome. Thank you.
That was a stern warning. We just watched Incredibles Part 2 again, and it was like Screenslaver. Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely remember. But it is a very true fact that podcasts can be a form of escapism. It's very seldom talked about, but it's a true thing that I've noticed.
Well, so trigger warning, and please don't kill me, but religion often is used as a tool of escape. It's used as like, I'm in my bubble and I'm safe, so I can judge you and pew, pew, throw little things at you because I'm safe. You're not, right? And I've known people to use it to escape their broken marriages. They're like, I don't need to fix this because I'm good with God, which is, our faith especially should never have that as an excuse, right? Because I could see in Christianity, you're like, well, if this doesn't work out, we're going to be strangers in heaven anyway. That's what a lot of people interpret. There's no marriage. Till death do us part. And then do us part means like, peace. We made it. Now we just go float around. But our faith is like, eternally blessed. So like your faith is not like, oh, I'm good with God. And so I can run away from you to go to God. It's like, no, God and your spouse are inseparably linked, right? So running away from your spouse to go to some church events, probably not the best. I'm not saying that church events are bad, but to go together with your spouse, bingo, bango, chicken and mango. You know what I mean?
I mean, everything can be used as a form of escapism, even exercise, right? And so,
like what? Give me like 5
easy,
things.
Like going to the gym, for example.
What else?
When you're doing push-ups, we should be listening to your wife.
I can't listen.
Hypothetical, non-real life examples.
I can't hear you over all my muscles.
Yeah. And so, again, to your point, it's not that any of those are bad. In fact, they're most of the time healthy. But when you link any type of activity with, and usually a negative emotion or a desire to stop feeling something, right? That's when you link those things. That's how addictions are formed. That's how escapism happens, right? And so we're not demonizing religion at all. Oh, Andrew might be. I'm not. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
But we're
guys,
not
come
we're not
on.
we're not saying anything. But it's like they're very, very insidious and subtle forms of just numbing ourselves that no one really talks about, right? Something that I noticed in myself, like kind of recently, maybe in the last few years, was I was going to podcasts a lot, especially like work, like exercise, health podcasts, things to get me motivated. And I noticed I was doing that at the gym or right before the gym or like on the way to the gym. I was like, I need this. It was like my routine. It's like, I need to listen to my podcaster in order to get ready, to get inspired to exercise. And I was running away from just the feeling of being unmotivated, and not really dealing with that, you know?
Yeah. So let's backtrack. We are going to talk about escapism today, everybody, because I realize we don't really have an episode just dedicated towards it. It comes up a lot because it's definitely the antithesis of connection is escapism. And so I did a deep dive into what is connection, right? Through that 2-part miniseries. Shout out to that 2-part miniseries. Those things take a lot of, it's like work, but work is work, but it's more like I have to wrestle with like, how do you take such a big idea and make it small? So listen to that if you haven't. But we wanted to do a deep dive into the antithesis of connection, which is escapism. Because when you escape, you're escaping reality. And so like, you ask a little kid, and I've asked my kids this a lot, and when we go to middle school workshops, kind of like, how many brains do you have? Everybody's like, 1. How many bodies do you have? 1. So how many lives can you live? And then they don't understand the question. They're like, I don't know, that's esoteric. But I eventually they get to 1, right? And it's like, yeah, you can only live 1 life. So this concept of running away from your life is, in essence, impossible, but you can trick yourself into believing that you could be somebody else for a period of time through escapism. And that's what drugs do. Drugs, they trigger certain, if you can imagine these little levers, and it like releases these feelings in your body when you take drugs. And it's like you feel good. Even though your problems haven't gone away, everything's still there, you feel good, but you haven't dealt with anything. So you're borrowing the good feeling from the drug. When the drug wears off, then you're left with not only the original feeling that you're not feeling good, but also now you're like in a deficit, and you keep on running this deficit, and soon enough you're massively in debt to the drug. This is when you see drug addicts and they can't be sober for a second. And this, by the way, shout out to Seth Rogen, who's a complete drug addict. I saw him running the podcast scene, by the way, talking about podcast. And he's like, I don't see the difference between smoking weed and just eating. Like, it's totally just like anything else. And I was like, holy crap, that is a straight on drug addict's excuse. And nobody's calling him out because for some reason weed is okay. But that dude can't be sober for a day. He cannot be. And he's like, because I just like it. I was like, no, because you're addicted and you can't, for some reason, deal with life. Like, not to judge, but that's just a fact. That's just a straight up fact. That's what addiction is. And same with people with their phones. Same with all these things. So we wanted to do a deep dive into some obvious forms of escapism, some not so obvious forms of escapism, why we escape, why it's futile, and also I want to try to find healthy ways of escape because movies are an escape. Good movies, bad movies, you're like, oh, this sucks, and you're just in your head. But good movies, like Benji, let's be vulnerable for a second. We have a common passion for a certain movie, and we even like blocked out a church and sequestered it to watch a movie alone in a giant church by ourselves because of our passion for this movie. What is this movie?
Interstellar,
baby. Because that movie takes us away to land far, far, far away.
Yeah.
So that's escapism, right? So let's just kind of unpack it, because if you can understand what escapism is, then why you're escaping, then you can actually use this desire to escape to understand yourself more. And High Noon's all about intentionality. So even these bad forms of escapism, they're trying to teach you something about yourself.
Yeah.
Why would you want to run away from yourself? Well, let's unpack that. So
Right.
Let's get into the forms of escape. What are like the not so obvious forms of escapism? I want to kind of spend some time there, Benji. Do you have any?
You mean actual forms of escaping? I would
Yeah,
say,
that people might
I
not
would say,
recognize.
I would say the most like subtle one that almost everyone will by default accept is social media use.
Sure.
Yeah. And they're very minute forms of escapism and they're very quick. But once you are aware of them and you catch them, then like everything changes because then you're on the toilet and you start taking your phone out and you're like, why am I doing this? Like, what reason do I have to check Instagram again, even though I know I just did it 5 minutes ago? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And also YouTube is a very subtle one because I include that in social media, but a lot of people won't because there's no like technical social aspects about it. More like an educational entertainment platform.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a very common like kind of internal dialogue like, oh, YouTube is educational. It's good for me because it's helping me, learn stuff, which is true to an extent. But of the men, especially that I talk to, vast majority of them are using YouTube specifically and podcasts as a form of just numbing themselves of the form of entertainment rather than education or intentional, deliberate education, So definitely media use for sure. News, I mean, that's a huge one right there.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like those things
education
are
in general,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
honestly, it's a slippery slope because like, okay, I'm still in Korea and we live close to this amazing library. My kids every day are like, when can we go to the library? And when do you hear kids say that, right?
Mm.
But we go in there and I saw a group of kids come straight from school. They were in their school uniforms. It was a gaggle of kids. It was, I don't know, a crew of 15 middle schoolers, something like that. So they're coming straight from school to the library. They all sit down in an orderly fashion and start studying. And I told my kids about this. I was like, I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. They weren't hitting each other with paper. The boys weren't spitting on the girls. They weren't giggling. They weren't distracted on video games. They were like studying. I was like, what is happening? Right? And then my eldest son was like, is that a good thing? And I was like, well, it's interesting because it shows a great amount of discipline. And like, I would say most kids lack that they could just go, that they could do that. Like of their own volition, their parents aren't there. There's no parental supervision. They went from school to the library and just started studying. So that is an unbelievable high standard of self-discipline for studying. But they were also just educating all day. And now they're educating at night. And like, maybe there's other stuff, that we could be doing with our lives other than studying. And I know studying's a big thing out here, so I'm not here to criticize an entire nation's viewpoint on education. But I do feel like there is a limit to how much the human brain can learn anyway. And how much we should be learning versus how much we should be testing our limits versus how much we should be doing things that makes us scared. And like there's the learning versus doing. So I also know on a kind of longevity of life, some people just never want to leave university because it's their safe place. So they go to as much university as they can, and then they need their doctorate, their master. They need, and then they just become professors. They never leave the university.
I happen to used to be one of those middle schoolers in Korea.
But you weren't so disciplined, were you? You're saying you're a hellraiser.
I was 100%. I was like study. But here's the thing. The reason I'm bringing that up is there's an interesting theme going on is that some forms of escapism are fueled by fear. And I think education, especially in Korean, like when I was in middle school, they would literally smack you with sticks if you didn't do your homework. They don't do that anymore. And so my reason
I knew he was going to bring that into
myself,
our group, by the way.
My reason to be disciplined with school in school was based completely in fear of not being disappointed in by teachers, by peers, and by literally physically hit. And so that's an important lesson because is the thing that we're going to escape fueled by fear or is it fueled by inspiration?
Sure.
Like, and going back to media use, like Netflix, for example, is the stuff we're watching. I can tell based on like my consumption of like shows, if I'm trying to escape something or I'm trying to be inspired. right? If it's fueled by fear or inspiration. If I go to South Park, for example, it's usually like, I just want to stop feeling something. But when I go to my other show right now is Dragon Ball. When I go to Dragon Ball, for me, that's like inspiration based. It's like, I want to feel something. I want to feel more alive, not less alive. Yeah.
Well, so I think here's a really good kind of measure for whether something's escape or not. Is it planned? And we don't want to micromanage ourselves and like have every aspect of our life planned to the like smallest detail. That's completely like cutting God out of the equation. But you should have a game plan every day, and it should be clear whether you're using your time to achieve those goals or, to accomplish the things that you want to or not. And I think you should make room for things like even social media if you want, things like film and television, but that they're a planned part of your day. And ideally, they come after the hard work as a form of reward, right? And without that level of intentionality, like when your phone ends up in your hands and you're scrolling, that's escapism. Even if it's for a couple moments, like in an elevator, you see it all the time.
Yeah.
You see people just whip out their phones, they start scrolling, and they have no idea what they're looking for, right? For the most part. Everywhere I go, see workers when they should be working now. You see, just people. There's a lot of small restaurants where I live, and whenever there's no customers, I see the owners, I see the employees just scrolling. So, the idea is that escapism doesn't need to be some big grand thing like a drug addiction. It's just not sitting with life and avoiding life. It's avoiding the thoughts in your head, the feelings in your heart, the feelings in your body. It's not talking to yourself. And because of that, the fact that we're so used to escaping is we become strangers to ourselves, right? You know, so many people, I would say the vast majority of people that I am in communication with cannot tell you why they feel a certain way. They might be able to identify, I feel sick, I feel tired, I feel angry, I feel hungry. Like, okay, why these things? Because even hunger, it's a definite need. We need to be hungry because if we're not hungry, we're not healthy, but not all the time. And not hungry for junk food, and like what is feeding this hunger? So even food can be a form of escapism. Cheese was my vice. I swear to God, if I die from any food, it's from cheese overdose. I've known that since I was a little kid. So to not put cheese in my house, and it became a real big issue when I started working from home, because when I was struggling with something, especially writing something, and I just like couldn't think of the right words, I just get up and I'd end up in front of the fridge and I just have a chunk of cheddar cheese in my hand. Like, what?
Like one of those mice, again? like a mouse in a Looney Tunes
like
cartoon.
a little rat, just killing myself. And there's one point where I was in LA and I was, things were going so well. There's like a 3-month stretch and I gained 20 pounds and I couldn't figure out why. And it was because of my cheese addiction. So, even food, but I think that's just a good gauge of are you able to just sit with yourself and figure out why you're feeling what you're feeling and what do you actually want? Because escapism is always like the path of least resistance to numb the feelings that you have, instead of just feeling the feelings that you have or understanding them. And when you do that, you end up being a stranger to yourself. And that's somebody who doesn't know why they do what they do. They're like, I swear I didn't mean to watch porn. Then why did you watch porn? I have no idea. How could you not have any idea why you're doing the things you're doing? That's a form of insanity, right? That you are out of control. If you're out of control, then who's in control? What is controlling you? That was my Jerry Seinfeld moment of the podcast. What is controlling you? So
perfect.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Let's get into the whys. Why do you think people escape? Like you talk to a lot of mentees, and are there any common themes that you've noticed?
Yeah, I think the obvious form of escapism is porn, masturbation, sexual dysfunction, addiction. But it's also not so obvious to people that are struggling in that tornado of and hurricane of emotions, right? Like you just said, if you ask someone why you act out, they're like, oh, I don't know, it just kind of happened. I was feeling great in the morning, and then by the evening, like I just went downhill, I jumped off a cliff. And so, but when I explain why they act out sexually from the perspective and lens of escapism, that's usually when people are like have this light bulb moment, right? Because people are perpetually confused, right, Andrew? Like, I don't understand. I try everything. I've done the conditions, the cold showers, the reporting. I've told my parents. I've told my spouse. I have blocked every access I can on my devices. I do everything I can, willpower alone, and nothing's working. But then you frame it of like, well, maybe you're trying to escape from something. And they're like, oh, like maybe that's the thing that I haven't figured out. Because then the next sequence of like questions is, what am I escaping from? Right? It's like a natural conclusion. Is like, what am I escaping from? That's so painful. That's so difficult that I've never really resolved. That is leading me to go to unwanted behaviors, right? And so if people start going down that train instead of, oh, I don't have willpower. I'm just a sexual freak of nature. I'm the worst. I don't have enough spiritual conditions under my belt. I'm a terrible husband. Usually the reasons people point to, right? Instead of, oh, I'm just trying to escape. Then it's like, oh, I mean, not to like minimize it or oversimplify it, but it's really like the most helpful and healthy way to perceive any addiction is like, I'm just trying to deal with something. And I've never learned from a very, very young age, I might add. It's not something that just popped out of nowhere. It's usually like teenagehood, 12, 11 years old, whatever age you started eating cheese, Andrew, like that age.
Man, I got started early, Doc.
That age is like people, for example, like so stressed from school, so common. Elementary school, so much homework. Middle school, so much homework. Don't know how to deal with the stress, right? What's the easiest way to deal with it? Well, I can process my emotions by talking to God and my parents or ChatGPT, which didn't exist, about how I'm feeling. It's like, what 12-year-old is going to learn how to do that? None, right? Yeah. And so they're going to be like, okay, what's the easiest thing for me to grab onto? Well, I don't have access to drugs. And if I did, maybe I'd do that. But I don't. There's a phone that has unrestricted access to hyper-stimulating pornographic stuff, which I'm already curious about, and is going to take me from 100 miles an hour stress out of my mind to zero, numb, no emotions. Like, of course, right? Yeah. This is what I tell guys. I'm like, of course you develop an addiction. You never learned how to deal with these emotions. And that's not to excuse it or justify it, but just to understand
it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, that's what's going on. And so we can remove the shame, often like the self-belittling talk in ourselves, like, oh, I'm just the worst and I have no willpower and I'm undisciplined, to, oh, I'm just trying to escape. And so that's like, that's the pivoting point for a lot of people. It's like, I got to figure out that's my new mission. Like, figure out those micro moments, which usually starts with like feeling something, emotion, difficult emotion, and I'm going to escape, isolate myself, not connect, isolate, go to my phone, go to Instagram, YouTube, whatever. That's where it starts, whatever escapism it is. And eventually that's not enough, right? It's not enough to fully numb. So then we go to other things and then porn and acting out, et cetera.
Yeah, I think when you're talking, I could see a very clear metaphor that if you can imagine kind of like a heartbeat or a thermometer where you have like a temperature, normal temperature. And your normal temperature, which is like your regular state, the person that just day to day, like you make rational decisions, you can judge whether you should do something or not from a pretty even keel place, right? That version of you is all right. Everything's okay. But then there's something that triggers you to go up, like let's say like a fever. And in that fevered state, you're making all sorts of terrible decisions. So let's say anger. You get triggered from your normal temperature, and now it's like you're running hot and you're angry. And in that angered state, you don't know how to deal with the anger. And so you just you're flailing. You're judging people. You're maybe yelling at people. maybe you're like Benji, you're just punching walls, right? And you don't know how to like get back down to a regular state. So what a lot of people do is they just reach for their phone and then that's how they regulate. That's how they get back down to a normal temperature. And so they think, well, that's my coping mechanism. So it's okay, right? But the point is, well, what triggered such a response? Why did you get so angry? What just happened here? And so this idea of regulating, when you have a really good system in your house, it regulates the temperature. So if it's really cold, you can say, I want to keep the temperature in my room 70 degrees, right? That's a good temperature. And so in the summer, when it gets really hot and it's 80 degrees outside and it starts to get like hotter than 70, it's 71, then it regulates by kicking on some air conditioning. And in the winter, when it gets really cold and it's 60 degrees out, or let's say 40 degrees outside, and then it starts getting cold, then the heater kicks on and it regulates the temperature to be 70.
Hey, if you happen to be a single person that wants to prepare well for marriage, for the matching, for the blessing, then my friend, we actually have a program just for you. It's completely free. You can join the core program at highnoon.org. We're going to take you through the stages to figure out, what does it mean to be a marriageable person? What does it mean to be ready? How do you actually prepare for marriage and the blessing? Check it out at highnoon.org. Join us in the program called Core. All right, see you there.
This for us would mean, oh, I'm noticing I'm starting to get a little bit angry. How do I regulate myself? Right? Oh, I need to talk to somebody. Oh, I need to chill. I was working on that this morning with my youngest son who runs hot. He is very big emotionally. I love it. I was just thanking God for it because he's like an Italian. I don't know. He runs real hot. And this morning he was like, he's in this like, and I was like, bro, chill. Like, just chill, breathe. First of all, breathe. I can't talk to you when you're like this because I get stressed because you're stressed and there's nothing happening here. So let's just breathe. And so eventually he breathed in through his nose. It was a lot to get him there. But when you're a kid, you're supposed to be regulated like that temperature by your parents. But most of our parents aren't regulated themselves. They run hot or cold. Hot meaning they have a temper, they judge, they accuse, or cold meaning they pull away, they're distant, they're not supportive, right? So they're supposed to regulate us, and when you don't have that, especially during difficult times, then you find ways to regulate yourself. And for most of us, that means, for me growing up, it was just television nonstop. I would have friends that are like, hey, let's go out. I'm like, nah, I'm just going to sit in my basement and watch TV for the next 8 hours. I had no idea what I was doing. I just didn't feel like talking to people. There's no there's no idea of what's happening. I just couldn't engage with people. I just wanted to watch TV. And they always thought, like, some days you're like this, some days you want to go out. Like, what's up with you? I was like, I don't know. I just like watching TV, I guess. But that was my form of escape, right? That was my form of regulating. And it was usually on a Friday night after a long week of dealing with emotions. And I would just I had no idea what was happening, but I just needed to sit and watch TV for hours on end. And that was just me not knowing how to deal with my emotions. So it's regulating your temperature, finding ways to identify when are you starting to run hot, right? So Benji, I guess like when I'm starting to get stressed, I feel it in my stomach so acutely. I can feel it. Oh, okay, it's starting. I'm getting stressed. Like if my kids are really stressed out or they're stressing me out, I first feel it in my stomach. That's my first warning sign. So that's when I know, okay, I'm starting to get stressed. I need to breathe this out. I need to like figure out how to deal with this feeling, right? Where does it happen for you? When you're becoming unregulated, when you're running hot or cold, where do you feel it in your body?
Usually in my fist.
When you're punching the world. Benji mad! Benji mad!
The walls here are literal paper in Japan. So it's just funny to think. There are walls that slide and there's actual holes, not from me, but there are holes from somebody poking holes in these walls. I probably feel it, I think in my head. Yeah. In my head, in my eyes. like here in like center of my head. Cause I just like, I start like, my eyes start darting very quickly and to the floor, right? And I start looking down a lot. I notice that I look down a lot when I'm feeling upset, and I don't look up or around me so much. Yeah.
And you know what? Like, your kids probably know you're like, when daddy's angry, they know, right? And so you have signs too that we might not even be aware of, but our family might know. What you can ask if you're single, you can ask your parents, like, what am I like when I start to get upset? I could be angry, could be sad, and they can tell you, you do certain things. And so this is all about cultivating an awareness. So like, when this is before you escape, you are going, you're on the road to escape, but you're not there yet, because now you're starting to get upset, right? And it could be, again, sad. That sadness, I would say, is more of like a cold, right? In terms of regulating, you're cold, you're sad, you're introspective, you're disconnected. Or if you're running hot, you're starting to get really upset, frustrated. You're clenching your jaw, like Benji's, it's like in your forehead, this kind of energy, you're running hot. So ask the people around you, what am I like when I start to deregulate? So that you can start to catch it. Because again, the reason why I know that my stomach is the place where I feel most upset is because I've been doing this work for a while, and I didn't realize that that's been my whole life. I just didn't know it until probably 2018 or so, when when I really started I started meditating, and I had the duality of knowing what really relaxed feels like. So when I'm stepping out of that state of relaxation, then I'm like, oh, the first place I feel unrelaxed is in my stomach. That's where I think the most, right? So again, then you can start looking at, well, why do I feel this? Okay, what's going on? Did I just get into a fight? Have I been staring at my computer screen? I was starting to feel it last night, actually. I was working a really long day yesterday, and I was in a coffee shop because my Wi-Fi stopped working for some reason. And then I was just staring at a screen for too long that I just stopped. And I started breathing, and I started doing gratitude exercises, because I realized that part of my stress was just too much work without a break. So it doesn't have to be like this big event, like, oh, I just got into a fight with my neighbor. It could be, man, I haven't moved my body in a while. But you start realizing like what's going on in your body when you're not feeling regulated, and then you can prevent escaping, right? So you're catching it before you even run away.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the micro escapisms that are the hardest to detect. Sometimes anger is the greatest form of escapism. And we don't like to admit that, because when people are angry, they justify the heck out of being angry. That's what being angry is. It's like, I'm angry because of you, because of this happened, right? But is that factual? No. Like, you're angry because you're angry. And you are being angry. It's not that you're choosing to be angry, but you, like, in the same situation, somebody else might have not been angry. And so it couldn't be the event itself that made you angry, or the person itself. But it's usually very subtle things, like anger is a huge form of escapism, because what we're saying in our head is, this is not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. And none of this is my responsibility. It's like, and I'm the victim of whatever's happening to me. That's escaping. That's escaping some unsettled thing. I'll give an example. Yesterday, the one that runs hot in our family is my son, Kojit, right? He's the oldest. He's the only boy. The other two are girls, and he is the Italian of our family. He is just like unfiltered, speaks his mind all the time. And he's 10, right? And so it's really nice, because it's kind of like, he's very friendly. He's so friendly to people, everybody. Because he always likes talking. He's constantly talking. But for me, when I was 10 years old, I was so quiet, and I was always like careful with my words. And so his character and my character are just like clashing, because he will say everything. If he doesn't like something, if he's bored, if he's stressed, he will let everybody know, right? Especially when we're driving in the car, right? And so yesterday we're on this like little trip here in Japan, and we're like trying to have a good time. And he was like, complain about something, really small stuff. And I was just like feeling it. I was just like, I was getting really upset because I was just like, can we just enjoy this trip without the commentary, like this kind of thing. But then I was recognizing in myself, I was like, there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. He's just being honest. He's just being honest about how he's feeling. I was like, that's a good thing. And that'll serve him very well in his future. It's something that I always wish I had, the ability just to speak my mind, right? Especially in a social setting. And so I was noticing like this flare up in me. And usually when that happens, my form of escapism is to chastise him, or just to make him the center of my frustration. Like, it's because can you just calm down? Can you just chill and enjoy this time as a family? But then we got out of the car, and then usually that means like I need to connect with him, because we have an interesting relationship. We're the only boys in our family. And so if I'm frustrated at him, I need to have a deep connection with him. So I'll just like hug him. I just like, can you sit here? Like, just sit with me. Right. And he thinks I'm going to scold him or something. Right. And he's like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, no, just come here and sit. Like, we don't have to talk. Just sit here. And so I just hold him, and then I try to like regulate our hearts, because we're both kind of heated. And so I try to regulate ourselves and just kind of calm down. And that changes the whole day for us. That changes everything. Like that kind of day could go very sideways of me just being upset at him for ruining, quote unquote, a good day or something like that. But instead we just kind of calm down. And doesn't happen all the time, but stuff like that, I've gotten pretty good at understanding. Like when I'm wrong is when I'm just feeling upset. It's like, I'm wrong for feeling this. There's nothing wrong with the situation, and I'm just making it mean something.
Yeah. It's interesting because so that's all unconscious until it becomes conscious, until you like see it. Oh, I see myself, right? Because there's some sort of statistic that I've heard repeated so many times, which is that 95 to 98% of what we do is unconscious. And then we consciously try to change it. Like, oh, I want to stop being an angry person. But you don't even know all the little triggers that are making you angry in the first place. Like, Venus flytraps. Have you ever seen those things? Those plants that eat bugs?
Yeah.
They're crazy.
Very
but
slowly.
They have these little kind of tentacles almost on the inside of their mouths. And they need to be triggered 3 times by the ant or whatever creature it is inside of their mouth before they clench their mouth shut. Because they don't want to, it wastes energy. So they want to make sure it's not a raindrop or something like that. So they wait for 3 triggers and then they react. And it's the same with us. It's like, you don't just get angry. There are different little triggers that are triggering in the background, and then you react. And so, and what I find interesting is that same statistic is true in the divine principle, where it depends who you ask, but 95 to 99% of the responsibility is God. And then we're in charge of 1 to 5,
less
whatever.
than 5%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a similar ratio, but the idea is that you can only be conscious of a certain amount of stuff at any given time. But when you get good at this game, and this is all just a game, learning about yourself, hacking the system, playing the game of being yourself. It's a game. It can be fun. You start to choose what you want to be aware of, and you can notice when you're starting to get angry or sad or whatever, these feelings, uncomfortable. It could just be discomfort, right? It's like for us, Benji, we were just on a staff retreat for 2 weeks. It was core staff and then chapter leaders. And then we were all together during all the Champyong stuff. We had no personal space. Couldn't really choose food a lot of the time. And it starts to feel increasingly more uncomfortable. And if you're not really intentional about that, you could definitely bug out. And we saw a couple of people starting to bug out, just not used to it as much as we are. We travel a lot together.
I almost jumped in the lake off of the cruise.
Wow.
And that was my sign that I needed to decompress a little bit.
To regulate, because that's crazy.
Yeah. I noticed my feeling like I really, really want to jump off this cruise right now.
Wow, that's.
And then I told Ravy, I was like, if I had extra clothes, I totally would. But it was really cold, so I didn't.
Yeah, that could have
Anyway,
been the death of all of us, Benji. So
yeah.
glad
Mhm.
you told me that. But it's just, it was uncomfortable. It wasn't bad.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody was having a bad time. It was just in life, sometimes you're so uncomfortable because you're outside of what you would like to be or where you think you should be or whatever. And that's just like, it's a weird feeling. And that discomfort is something that we definitely want to escape from. So
Mhm.
just kind of identifying this. So in a situation like that, all of us had to sleep in strange beds, very close to each other, smushed together, sharing a lot of space. We had to find our way to exist within that by being intentional. And so that's the name of this game, is if you want to enjoy life and stop escaping life, you need to understand consciously when you are veering off the path from being the person you want to be. And in the beginning, it's kind of like you only notice after you're deep in the woods. Like you're already angry, you're already doing regrettable things before you really notice, man, I'm not being the person I want to be. But the more you play this game, the more you start to notice earlier on in the journey, before you're completely angry or completely sad, you start to notice, I'm becoming more angry, I'm becoming more sad. And you can start to work on it so you don't go full anger or full sadness or whatever, right? And that's just a matter of awareness and intentionality. That's what the North Star goal is. You're practicing being, let's say, a Zen person. So let's say you wake up, you have an amazing morning routine. You are just totally Zen, and then you leave your house, things are going pretty good. Little annoyances here and there, but you're recovering fine. But then by midday, you're just full on hating your neighbors or the person on the subway who smells, and you're just like, what's wrong with them? And you're already off the
Mhm.
track. So
Mhm.
it's if you do have a destination of somebody you'd like to be, then you just practice that, and then you start to notice, when am I veering off track? What caused me to veer off track? And you get better at stopping yourself from veering off track earlier and earlier, dealing with the emotions, and then you just get to be at that person that you're trying to be more and more and more and more and more. It takes practice, but it's so much fun. And then all of a sudden, escaping doesn't even really factor into your day because you're too busy living. You're too busy enjoying life itself that it wouldn't make any sense to escape. And so this is the game that we're asking you guys to play through creating a North Star goal, through identifying your Chanelguk self or your Hainun self or your pure water self. These are all synonymous. And then practicing this in community, getting accountability from somebody that you can text with when you're feeling a little bit off, that you can get back on track. This is how you live the life of your dreams, where the external world doesn't have to change so much for you to have the dream of your life. You don't have to be a millionaire. That's all incidental. It's like, it's stuff that is good or bad or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's like just being you, being happy with being yourself makes you the richest person in the world, makes you the strongest person in the world. This gratitude. And so this is what we want. But you can't do that if you escape. But you can't just stop escaping. You need to find out, why are you escaping? And you need to deal with those emotions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Bone?
What about good forms of escapism?
Yeah. Again, so intentionally, like,
Hmm.
so we don't have a traditional schedule in my family, right? We never really have. So at some point we were watching movies just on random nights, like on a Tuesday, and it just felt weird for some reason. Cause it was just like, the kids were like, can we watch a movie? And I'm like, I don't know. So then we just decided, no, movies are just for weekend. Maybe we'll watch a documentary like midweek, like maybe once every few months, just cause we want to learn something together. But movies, that form of escaping together as a family, to go on a journey and watch Up, right? We just watched Incredibles 2. It's such a good movie. And we've seen it a billion times, but we could watch it a billion more times because it's a fun place to go, to be a superhero. You're like living vicariously through these people. So like movies, entertainment is always a form of escape. Going to the theater. People still pay hundreds of dollars to go see people in stadiums. Why do you think that is? Because you ascend, you go to some place, you transcend your, like everything you know, and you just get to feel, you get to be in this community that feel something together. That's a
Mm-hmm.
form of escapism. But I also know people who are addicted to raves or going to concerts all the time, and like they can't feel good unless they go to concerts. That's obviously not healthy. So
Yeah.
like as a form of entertainment, I think that's a really good form of escapism. But
Yeah,
consciously.
it's to feel something rather than to not feel something, to numb yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. To feel something in addition when you're already feeling good, to celebrate. And there's, again, if it's in the right context and the right frequency, and that's probably a little bit different for everybody, then it's healthy. And even if you think about it, certain foods like desserts give you this sugar high. They give you a dopamine rush, right? Having this sugar. And so I've recently, since being in Korea, I definitely can see my abs a lot less than pre-events in Korea. Let's just say that. So I realized, okay, one dessert a week. That's what I'm going to do from now on, because desserts just kept on creeping in. At all of our events, apparently in our movement, they give you a log of cake. I have a picture of somebody that I will not call out, who we were waiting for like an hour for the event to start, and he just whips out the log and starts eating it like a Subway sandwich, but it's just a log of fat. It's just a cake. It's a cake. You know, you call it whatever you want, but it's a cake. And he's just eating a cake by himself. And I got some good, it was like, he looked a little bit ashamed of his life choices in the moment.
I'm
but
hungry.
He was so desperate. Yeah.
I love the justification everyone has. I'm so hungry.
Yeah, I've been awake so early. I need cake. So yeah, for me, like conscious desserts are so much better, because then it's like, okay, if I only get one dessert a week, I wanna choose this. And so I had my dessert last night. It was great. Actually, it wasn't that great. I thought it looked a lot better than I thought. But
Got it.
that kind of stuff, you know, even what you eat, having special treats, people have cheat days, stuff like that. It's when you get to enjoy frivolous things that we don't need. They're not bad if they're intentional and if they're part of a larger plan. It's just when they creep in that they start to become a real big problem for your mental, physical, emotional health.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Well,
even like laughing, I don't know, just having fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're meant to just laugh all day, every day. There's some sad stuff out there. There's some serious stuff that we need to figure out. But you need to laugh. But definitely some people only watch comedies because they don't want to deal with sadness or like real emotion. So anyway, what were you going to say?
Some people only watch South Park because they don't want to deal with real emotions. I was going to say...
Those are the same type of people, by the way, who jump off cruise ships. So chill.
And punch walls in Japanese. paper walls. I will say what I'm taking away is that we all need to regulate emotions. How we regulate is vitally important. We can either isolate or connect, which in other words is to escape or to regulate in a healthy, productive way. So the way that the way I framed it for myself and I've taught others is that there are three main ways that we all deal with emotions historically, right? I'm talking pre-phone, pre-screen era. There's movement. There's, so number one would be movement. Number two would be introspection. And number three would be connection, like speaking with people. Movement is anything that's like a hobby or exercise or jumping jacks or like arts and crafts, drawing, watching a movie, or I guess not technically watching a movie because we're pre-screens. And number two is introspection, is like prayer, meditation, journaling, thinking, right? Thinking through things. And then the third one is connection, which is talking to a group, accountability person, parent, spouse, village wise person, pastor, whoever, but just God, right? Talking with God, connecting with some being, some individual or group. And the next question people have is like, which one of those is the best thing to do? Which is an interesting question. But I would say that actually connecting with somebody is probably the best thing to do, because it has the dual benefit of creating connection and getting ourselves out of our own head, right? And seeing from a different perspective, but also has the benefit of trying to understand the emotion itself. Because then you can talk about like, hey, spouse, Mom, Dad, I'm feeling really stressed today. And I'm noticing that I just want to go into my room and go under my covers and scroll. Like, that's what I feel like I want to do. I'm just telling you this because I'm trying to get better at regulating my emotions, right? And so you have that added benefit of understanding the emotion and also connecting with people. Movement is like, I would say, like exercise and things like that. It's like a healthy form of escapism, but it's also like, let's just say there's a million worse things you can do. There's like a billion things you could do on the internet that's infinitely worse than exercise and movement. But exercise is a form of dealing with emotion that is really good, right?
Sure.
Like animals, for example, when they fight or when they're stressed, they do this thing after they have a fight where they shake it off. They go like this and they go like this, right? And if you look into why they do that, it's to get rid of all the excess energy and aggression they have stored up, so that they don't go off still feeling stressed out.
Sure.
And like thinking about like that monkey, I couldn't believe that it did that. They just like forget about it because they like get rid of it. And so exercise is a form of like letting loose the energy and excess aggression we have that may be the cause of it. And for me, sometimes it's just doing a bunch of push-ups really helps to just let go of emotions, right?
Yeah, great. I think those are wonderful. Yeah, because that basically fits into the opposite of addiction or escapism. So let's say the opposite of escapism is connection. And so in the connection episode, it's very clear that there's 4 main forms of connection, which is to self, to others, to God, and to your sense of purpose in this world. And that fits into those 3 categories, right? So in terms of purpose, it's like, like putting something into the pot of your life of meaning is like something continual that you can invest in that helps you feel like you're making the world a better place. So that could be done through all those things aforementioned. So yeah, cool. I think that about covers it. We want you to know, again, the more that you see it as a game and you're learning about yourself, and it's just like you're trying to drive straight to that North Star goal. When you start to veer off track, try to notice it as early as possible because it's easier to veer back. I took my kids to go play virtual racing at this racing place out here that we always come to when we're in Korea. And my youngest son just crashed all day, every day. And so it was hard. It was hard for him to catch up to his brothers because he was like veering way off the track, right? And same with life. It is if you're always like veering way off and crashing, it's just like you're so far behind who you want to be. So the earlier you notice that you're veering, the easier it is to get back on the road and the less time and energy waste off the track in the mud, stuck, spinning in circles. So that's what we want for you. And if you need help to identify, where you are escaping and how you're escaping, how to be more effective in terms of not escaping and dealing with life, continue with our programs. We're building more and more content and different ways for you to experience the good stuff in life and to stop escaping. This is our commitment to you. So stick around or ask Benji. If you ever feel like jumping off a cruise ship, Benji has a hotline. It's 1-800-RAGE-PANTS.
I still think it was a good idea. It was a good idea. It was a good idea. It was too cold. Didn't have extra clothes.
That's what Axl Rose did in November Rain in that old song.
Oh, yeah?
Jumped off a giant cruise ship. Anyway, thank you all for listening. God bless your faces, your minds, and your hearts, and your bodies, and your souls. See you next time.
Hey, just a quick intermission to let you know that High Noon has a program just for single people that want to prepare well for marriage. So if you happen to be one of those single people that wants to be a stellar, fantastic, amazing, marriageable man or woman, then check out the core program, which you can find at highnoon.org. It is just for single folks like you who want to get ready for marriage and be ready for marriage. So join that at highnoon.org, and we will see you in the core program.